Hi, my name is Glenda. I'm a former film executive, currently a story consultant, a screenwriter and filmmaker, and just all-around geek. I want to analyze Predator Badlands from the perspective of a story consultant to hopefully help you as you are on your journey, or just because you just want to learn a little bit more of what makes this movie so great. I also think that doing these videos and analysis helps me stay in it. Like, I'm always analyzing as a filmmaker, but I think this process really helps that sink deeper and really helps my own creative process. So let's get into talking about Predator Badlands. Without further ado, I just want to get into it really quickly because it's just awesome. So I'm going to go into the spoiler-free review first, and then we'll break it down as a consultant and the story aspects of it after. First of all, I just want to say, I went in not knowing anything. I don't watch trailers. I try not to know who's in it, although it's hard to avoid because of posters and interviews that'll pop up in my feed. So I did know that Elle Fanning was in the film. I didn't know she was going to be a synthetic. That was a really cool reveal. I think the film was just beautiful, just unexpected. I think with Predator films, you know that the action is going to be hardcore and cool. The fact that Dan Trachtenberg was able to make a really beautiful story out of it, like he did with Prey, was just incredible. The whole time I was at the edge of my seat. I watched it in IMAX, which I highly encourage you to do. I watched it with an audience, which is the best thing you can do. I'm definitely an advocate of watching films in the cinema and watching it with other people. Everybody clapped at the end. We watched this late at night. We went to a 10:40 p.m. screening, and with trailers, that means that it ended like 1:30, 1:40 in the morning, and people were so hyped. I was so hyped. I was tired when I went, and this film kept me awake. The visuals were immaculate. They were beautiful. They were captivating. I think he does a good job of isolating the characters and making sure that it's character focused, and then adding action as a beautiful highlight. He merged both really well. He understands that internal stakes are more powerful than physical stakes, but understands how to merge them both and create something magical. I honestly can't recommend this movie enough. It blends levity, action, depth really extremely well. One thing that Dan Trachtenberg said was that he wants to develop the world and the characters to then build upon something bigger. So I just think it was so powerful and beautiful. That's my spoiler-free review. I do want to get into the spoilers, so if you have not seen it yet, go ahead and pause, watch the movie, come back. I want to break it down for you. I want to tell you as a script consultant why this movie is so great and what it does so well. So let's start with the opening. Dan Trachtenberg was on Happy, Sad, Confused with Josh Horowitz recently. They both geeked out about each other, which was really cute and awesome. One of the things that he talked about was the opening and how important that was for him, how he's inspired by J.J. Abrams' two films and their openings. One was the opening to Star Trek, and the other one was the opening to Super 8. What he found powerful about those openings is that within a few minutes you fall in love with the main character, or you're moved, or you're emotional. So I think that understanding when you're writing a story that you have to have a strong opening and a strong ending is important, and he knows that's important, and he chose to be inspired by those two films. You choose your own inspirations and see what films really speak to you, what films resonate with you as far as openings and endings are concerned. In his opening, he does a fantastic job of embracing his what if. His what if is, what if Predator is the hero? What if he's the one that we want to follow? What if he's the journey that we're following? What if he's the character that we are rooting for? And in the opening, you see him fighting his brother. You see right away the dynamics of his family, the dynamics of his culture, of his clan, which, by the way, was beautiful. I think there's comic books or maybe books as well. I'm not too fluent in Predator lore or the Yautja, but I loved that they leaned into that idea of the Predator, and that's part of their religion, their clan, their rules, so to speak. They have to hunt. They have to be good hunters. Like, now it's not just something that's for the film and because he's a monster he hunts. It's literally ingrained in their DNA. And so to lean into that was beautiful. It was world building. It was simple and strong and something that you can understand right away, and you understand the stakes and the emotional stakes immediately. And when the brother has to behead him basically and doesn't, and the father kills him and he's sent away, it's powerful within minutes. And I think it's powerful just at the opening, fighting with your brother in that intense way, and then you add the dynamics with the dad dad and the brother and their stakes in that situation, it really elevated everything and made you immediately invested in the journey of the Yautja deck. So one thing I want to talk about that this film did so well is the hero's journey. So if you're not familiar, the hero's journey is based off of Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces. There's also a great book that you should read by Christopher Vogler called The Writer's Journey, which also incorporates this and talks a lot about archetypes and how you can incorporate those into your film. One thing to know about the story circle, which actually Dan Harmon has his own called Harmon's Story Circle. He uses it in Rick and Morty for every episode, which is what makes it so, I believe, so powerful. But one thing to know is that you don't need to follow the story circle or the hero's journey in the regular order that you normally see it. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey can miss certain aspects. It can be told in a different order. Just always remember that story comes first, and all these things that we consider rules are really your tools. So think about your story, write your story, and use these tools, these rules as we call them, as a way to elevate your story. So normally, like when I'm writing, I will take all the knowledge, I'll reread storytelling rules, even though I'm very versed in them. I always like to revisit them, and then I'll write in a transient state of the story. I like to outline as well, but I still get into a transient state when I'm writing, and then I refer to the tools and the screenwriting rules to see where can I make the story stronger, and if it does make it stronger, do it. And so this film in particular does follow the hero's journey pretty traditionally. It follows a traditional ordinary world, special world, back with the elixir, and I want to break down how it abides by the hero's journey very closely. So let's talk about how the story circle begins with Predator Badlands and how it follows a traditional story circle and hero's journey. He begins in his ordinary world, right? We see him with his brother. We see that quickly established. He's on his planet, and then his first call to adventure is his mission to hunt, to prove himself to his dad and the clan. So initially he wants to go to Jenna, the death planet, to really prove himself, but then he changes his mind. He wants to stay when he sees his brother die, and he wants to fight his father. So then he becomes a reluctant hero who is sent on his journey reluctantly. And I want you to remember that when you're developing a character, it's important that you know that the goals can change. It can change from scene to scene, from act to act. So yeah, his initial goal was to go to Jenna, then it wasn't. Then once he's there, obviously his goal is to kill the Kalisk. So once he's there, he meets his mentor Thea, and Thea, which by the way, doesn't Elle Fanning do an amazing job of Thea? I think they incorporated her in such a great way. She's quirky, but it never took away from the tone for me. I thought she just was a good foil character to Deck. He had a rough exterior, was, obviously his mission is just to be a good hunter and take down the Kalisk, and here's Thea, who was very connected to nature and the species of the planet, and he's going to learn from Thea. He's going to learn from Thea about the razor blade grass and, using honey to catch flies instead of vinegar, and that comes back later. So he meets his mentor in Thea, and she teaches him about the species and the different aspects of this planet. So now let's talk about his first threshold. I believe his first threshold is fighting the bull-like creature, whose name I don't remember. But through that process, he has to listen to Thea. And in a way, I just thought about this now. She is kind of like Yoda on his back. And that visual of Yoda being on Luke Skywalker's back just came to me right now, thinking about how she's on his back. It also makes me think of C-3PO when he's in pieces and he's on Chewbacca's back. Those are great callbacks and great visual references for that moment. But in any case, in this first threshold, he meets his ally in Bud, and what a great opportunity to continue to develop Dak. We haven't seen a Yautja build friendships and allies in this way, and it was awesome. I think it was cool to see that Dak was challenged to see whether or not he takes on these allies as mentor. When Dak takes on Bud as an ally, it is character development. development. He's changing in that moment. Even when he takes Thea, he has to tell himself she's a tool, and continuously saying it almost seems like a mantra that he needs to say to remind himself she's not an ally or a mentor, but she really is, obviously. And Bud becomes an ally too. And even when he spits on him, which this movie just blends levity and action and depth so well, and that moment just works so well. He doesn't do anything to him. He just accepts that that's part of his nature. Like the Yautja hunting is part of his nature. And I think he's sitting there just realizing that maybe they're all the same in some way. At least we'd like to think so, or I'd like to think so. He definitely didn't hurt him or do anything to him. So I think the non-action says something about a character too. To me, the approach to the INMOST cave happens in several moments. I felt like there was an opportunity to see the situation with Dia as black and white when she lies to him, and he also doesn't do anything to her. Obviously the second part of approaching his INMOST cave and really changing and deciding, making specific choices that change his character. All of it feels very organic, by the way. All of it pushes the story forward. All of it are puzzle pieces that fit together, and I think that's so important in storytelling. And I think it's really important for Dan Trachtenberg to make sure everything feels organic. So I think a moment where he's also approaching the INMOST cave is when Dia releases him, helps him, and he realizes that he's got to save her. He doesn't have to, but he decides to. And that was beautifully earned character decision. And the fact that he takes what he learns from her is incredible. Let's now talk about the road back. He comes back resurrected, which is another part of the journey. His road back is with his allies. He's on the ship. He now has Bud and Thea, and he's resurrected as a new version of himself with, you could say, his new clan. So I just went to see it again, and I saw it with my daughter. One thing I want to mention that I forgot to mention is that Joseph Campbell also always talks about how typically in the hero's journey, the hero will come out of water reborn new. It sort of symbolizes rebirth, and actually Deck does that in this film. So when he is kicked off the ship and Thea is saying go, go, and saving him, he falls into a body of water, and when he comes out of that water, he comes out reborn. And then the return with the elixir is him taking down his father with everything he gained from this journey that he went on. And the thing is that it's not just physical, right? It's not just that it's so badass, which it is. It's the emotional stakes of that scene too. So when you're blending both together, again, you're creating like this movie magic. For me personally, I just thought it was next level. Like I said, every moment had me captivated and invested in all the main characters. So bravo to Dan Trachtenberg and team for creating a beautiful hero's journey with such an untraditional character, and you did it so well. It's going to be something that I watch over and over again for years to come, and will probably suggest to up and coming writers as a story consultant. And again, you don't have to do the story circle in the traditional sense. You can pick and choose different elements. Your story should come first, and all these things should help your story become stronger. And in this specific journey, the traditional story circle just elevated the story and made it better. Another element that I really loved about this film and in the storytelling was the parallel between Thea and Deck. Whenever you can do a parallel thematically between your two main characters, it just elevates the story that much more. It makes it all interwoven better. And the fact that they were both on a journey of questioning their religion, so to speak, their clan, their identity, and exploring that together in a way, that part is beautiful. They both revered their siblings. So that parallel in and of itself was incredible and beautifully done. Also, let's talk about the great, beautiful payoffs, like the one where Bud spit on Deck, and that comes back later and saves him. And then you realize at that moment too that Bud, she's also abandoned, an abandoned kid, so to speak, like the way that Deck and Thea are. They were three misfits the whole time working together. It's just so beautiful. Another chef's kiss, like amazing, incredible writing. When you're writing, you want to make sure that everything is earned, that everything pays off. Sometimes that can't always happen, but in this film, everything is earned, everything pays off in such a beautiful, eloquent, artistic way. It's like this intricately woven quilt or masterpiece or piece of art that's collaborative but all meshed together beautifully and well. I also want to talk about elements of the directing that elevated the film. For example, Jeff Cutter in the camera that he used. He used the ELIXIR Mini LF, and he also used the Selmis Apollo anamorphic lens. It's lightweight so that they could carry it all around New Zealand, but it also creates an epic cinematic feel. It has a bokeh effect and also the lens flare effect, which he likes, and so does J.J. Abrams. I think it was a perfect lens for this film. He wanted something atmospheric, and this definitely created that. So I looked at Dan Trachtenberg's short film based on the Portal game, and one of his inspirations was Stanley Kubrick. He wanted a symmetrical and austere style that really heightens the scenes, and I think that kind of translates into this film a little bit too. There were a lot of beautiful static shots. Those type of shots can make the scene feel more emotional. But I also thought that the action sequences were well done. It almost felt like a video game, and I felt like I was right there in it. It wasn't super choppy. It was like one shots, and the movement was almost like a dance. It felt very beautiful, and you were very entrenched into these battle scenes. And I'm thinking about the battle with the Calisk specifically. I just think that those scenes were just done so well. And one thing that Dan Trachtenberg mentioned in his interview with Josh Horowitz is that he wants to create a world first, right? He wants the characters to be loved first, for people to be invested in these characters first. When they were discussing the emergence of Alien and Predator, and when they discussed not using the Xenomorph, I think that him saying that he wanted to keep the story focused and really have it be this intimate portrait of these characters before he did all that, if he does all that, I think that's just so great. And like, it shows strong storytelling confidence that you're not trying to rely on a big Easter egg to make your story great. Like, he used small elements of Alien, but he didn't include the Xenomorph. But where I'm going with that is that I think Marvel should pay attention. We're forgetting that why we loved Avengers and Endgame and Infinity Wars was because you had built up all those characters over the years. They each had their own film where we were identifying with the characters and the emotional stakes were high. It wasn't just always the world is ending. Just remember that, Marvel. Remember where you came from. Remember your roots. It all, at the end of the day, comes down to a strong story and being invested in character. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about this, but it's another reason why I wanted to make this video was I started hearing about grifters and people hating on this film and calling it woke, which is so completely strange to me. If anything, they should be happy that there's a woman being called a tool and thrown around, and maybe we should be complaining about that. But I'm not. I think it's all great character development and all serve the story, so it's fine. I think we're throwing around the word woke way too much for anything that has diversity, and I'm not just seeing that in like specific groups. I'm seeing it even in my own social groups sometimes. And I think the problem is that sadly, if there's something done with a person of color or any kind of minority or marginalized group and the story isn't done well, then we automatically feel like they're just trying to be woke. I think the problem is that, for one, I don't think our community or any marginalized community should be blamed for that. I think it's okay to recognize that there's a shortage of certain types of culture, people, anything that's marginalized in cinema. I think it's okay to notice that and try to address that. I think the issue is that we also, myself as a minority, deserves to have strong storytelling. And sometimes we're not doing that. We're throwing a person of color and then not giving them strong stories sometimes, or whatever the case is. But in this case, like, I don't see why it's woke. If I guess some of the things that I'm hearing is that marginalized communities may identify themselves with deck. Okay, I mean, I think that's normal to see yourself in a character, isn't it? I think that's just part of art. So I think the idea of the underdog has been done forever. That has nothing to do with being woke or anything like that. So I really didn't want to talk about it that much, but it does really bother me. But what I do think is important to talk about along with this grifter situation is the way we see films and the way we review them. I think it's important to remember that film is an art, but any art is subjective. So if we don't like casting, the color usage, the director, or whatever, that's just personal. That has nothing to do with what makes a movie good or bad, or storytelling good or bad. That's just more your personal preference. For example, I have seen films, TV shows where the writing is completely strong and I can tell that it's well done, well written, and for whatever reason, it just wasn't for me. I think we have to remember to just say it just wasn't for me, but we can recognize when something is well done, and vice versa. There's so many of us, and which is funny to me that people that hate on things, everyone loves something completely stupid or not well written, but we love it for whatever reason and it spoke to us. I love a lot of things from B horror or D horror movies or whatever. I think criticizing something, we should criticize the structure of it, the storytelling, but to just say we just don't like the color or the characters, that's not real criticism. So I think we should all start saying, like, if we don't like something, we should just say that wasn't for me, but I can recognize why it's good. I mean, at least I like to do that. And I think if we want to grow as artists, if you're here watching as a filmmaker, when you're analyzing things, be critical, but see why things work, even in stuff that you don't like. It's just as important to see what's good in something as it is to see what's bad in something. If a banana taped to a wall can sell for millions, then who are we to judge? As long as it has meaning behind it, then that's what matters, right? If the artist had a purpose behind what they did and the consumer or the person enjoying the art resonates from it, then that's what matters. I do think let's put intention in our art, let's know what we're doing. And the banana on the tape thing is a funny example, but that artist had a purpose on why they did that. So I think let's just remember what the difference is between personal preference and personal thoughts versus like what's actual criticism of the art. With all that said, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a thing or two, and if not, hopefully you just enjoyed watching my enthusiasm for this film, and I hope to do more of these videos. I have other content that you can see. I'm again a filmmaker, a geek. I just love cinema, and I want to share that experience with you and my filmmaking experience with you and this whole journey with you. So please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. My brother said no one's gonna follow me because I'm all over the place. Subscribe. Prove him wrong. He says nobody will follow me. Will you follow me?